Common workplaces for lawyers in the Philippines can be divided into three categories. Where can you work as a lawyer? Welcome to my channel. I'm Tina. I'm a corporate lawyer in the Philippines. Before anything else, can we just take a second to appreciate my super cute channel logo? Thank you so much to my lovely subscriber Mika. Out of the blue, she just reached out to me and told me, hey, I made you a logo. Do you want to use it? And I saw how cute it was and I was like, heck yeah. Thank you so much, Mika. For you guys who are law students, she is also a first-year law student. So if you're interested to follow her, I will leave a link to her Instagram in the description box below. So guys, this is the 4th episode of my legal FAQ series, wherein I answer some of your recurring questions about law school and legal practice. I will leave the links to those 3 previous episodes down in the description box below, so do check them out if you're interested. And also, please feel free to continue asking me your burning questions about law school and legal practice. Ask away! Today's topic is for you guys who are curious about the places or the offices where lawyers can work after they pass the bar exam. Do you go public service or is private practice more up your alley? When I say private or public, what specific offices do I mean to which lawyers commonly go? Or should you just decide to save yourself from the premature aging and wrinkles and just not practice at all? Joke! This first Where to Work Legal FAQ will be the first in a number of episodes wherein I will talk about the places where you can work as a lawyer. Since this is the first Where to Work episode, today I'll just be doing a framework or an overview of where lawyers commonly work. In succeeding episodes under this topic naman, I will be breaking down each of those workplaces one by one. It's in those separate episodes that you can expect us to get into the nitty-gritty of each of those different workplaces. But today, let's just discuss the general framework of where you can work once you're a lawyer. Later on, I'll also talk about the statistics of where most of my UP Law batch went, as well as my own tips and recommendations for choosing your workplace. Keep in mind that these workplaces which I'm about to mention are those common places wherein lawyers usually work. We're just talking about informal statistics or numbers here. I will no longer include those workplaces or jobs which are quite unusual, like for example becoming the vice consul at the Spanish embassy. That sounds like a great job actually, but it's unusual. So for our purposes today, our only question is, where do most lawyers work? So don't let the workplaces which I am about to mention limit your professional horizon. Just because they're not in this list doesn't mean you can't totally work there. You can go wherever you want to go. You can be whatever you want to be. Unless you want to be a unicorn. Because unicorns don't exist. So after all of that being said, let's jump in. Where can you work as a lawyer? Common workplaces for lawyers in the Philippines can be divided into 3 categories. The first is private practice, the second is public service, and the third is the academe. This goes without saying, but in private practice, you work in the private sector, in public service, you work in the public sector, and in the academe, you work as an educator. Now, what specific workplaces fall under private practice and public service? Let's break down the common workplaces under each category, starting with private practice. What are the common workplaces in private practice? The first common private workplace is a law firm, wherein your job title would be junior associate. Based on the statistics of my UP Law batch, as well as my husband Mike's San Beda Law batch, as well as my brother's Ateneo Law batch, and just general law school culture in those 3 schools, going to a law firm is without a doubt the top choice and most preferred options for students from those 3 schools. I can say with certainty that most fresh grads or most new lawyers, at least from those 3 schools, UP, Ateneo, Beda, do want to go to law firms straight from law school. So why do most new lawyers want to go to law firms? I hope you don't mind me being candid here, but it really revolves around these 3 reasons: training, money, and prestige. That's just the reality of it. Now, there are so many different types of law firms. In terms of size, there are small law firms, medium ones, big ones. Parang Goldilocks. In terms of hierarchy, there are law firms which follow a delineated hierarchy, meaning senior partner, senior associate, junior associate. Naturally, those are usually the big law firms. Then there are those law firms which just follow a loose hierarchy of partner and associate. Those are usually the smaller law firms. In terms of profit sharing, which basically means getting a chunk of the share of the profits of that law firm on top of your basic salary, there are law firms which offer junior associates profit sharing right away, as in as soon as they're employed in the law firm, they get profit sharing agad. There are some naman which allow profit sharing only when you're a senior associate, and others which allow it only when you're a partner. In terms of schools accepted, there are law firms which accept students from any law school, while there are those which accept lawyers only from particular law schools. There are law firms which are great for litigation training, while there are those which are great for corporate training. So there are so many different types of law firms. But those factors just give you a general idea of how varied and different law firms can be. Like I said earlier, I'm going to be discussing law firms in more detail in a separate video. The next common private workplace is a corporation or a company, wherein your job title would be legal counsel or in-house counsel. When you're an in-house counsel, you are hired by a corporation's or company's legal department to handle a range of legal issues affecting the company, including corporate, labor, regulatory, tax, policy, and other matters. It just means that you're the corporation's lawyer, basically. The corporation is your client. Now, I mentioned earlier that traditionally, many lawyers like to work in law firms straight out of law school. They work there for a couple of years, and in doing so, they gain great training. But they also gain other unwanted things. Weight, eye bags, wrinkles, cynicism. They lose their social life. They neglect their health, their personal relationships. So eventually, many of them realize that number one, they've been trained enough in the law firm, and two, that they want an actual life. So they resign from law firms and go to companies. So the usual track is really law firm and then company, and not vice versa. And that order works because it's really best to go into a corporation with good law firm training and experience. Now, as with law firms, there are so many different types of companies. In terms of nationality restrictions, which you guys know from your corporation law subject, there are companies which must be 100% Filipino owned, like mass media. There are those which can have up to 25% foreign equity, like private recruitment companies. There are those which can have up to 40% foreign equity, like those companies engaged in the exploitation of natural resources, and so on. In terms of industry naman, there are just so many. There are public utilities like water, energy, real estate, construction, BPO, IT, business services, banking and finance, retail, gaming, manufacturing, mining, pharmaceuticals, automotive and shipbuilding, agriculture, tourism, and that's just a number of them. There are just so many. In terms of the size of their legal departments, there are corporations which have plenty of lawyers, like for example 30 plus lawyers in their legal department alone, not even counting the lawyers in other departments like HR, tax, corporate governance. So these are obviously the bigger corporations like Meralco Legal. On the other hand, there are corporations which have just one or two lawyers. In terms of divisions within the legal department naman, there are companies wherein all the lawyers handle literally all the issues of the company. So regardless of whether it's a litigation question or labor or tax or corporate, it can be thrown at you. There are other companies naman whose legal departments are further subdivided into different sub-departments, like a litigation division, corporate services division, labor division, etc. So if you want to go to a company, there's really a whole spectrum of options awaiting you. Businesses will always need lawyers. It's really that simple. So just choose an industry and take your pick. The next common private practice is working as a solo practitioner. When you're a solo practitioner, you're kind of like a one-woman or one-man law firm. Except that you're not a law firm. Rather, you work for yourself. Typically, solo practitioners handle almost all of the responsibilities required for their legal services, although they may occasionally hire legal support staff, like administrative staff. I only know very few lawyers who went into solo practice, but it's still an option. So now you guys know the usual workplaces you can go if you prefer private practice. Now let's go to the second category of common workplaces, which is public service. When you're a lawyer working in public service, then you're basically a government employee. So what are the common workplaces under public service? There are many. First is the Office of the Solicitor General, wherein your starting job title would be Associate Solicitor 1. The Solicitor General is basically the principal law officer and the legal defender of the Republic of the Philippines. So the Office of the Solicitor General, or OSG, is basically something like the law firm of the government. It prosecutes and defends cases on behalf of the Philippine government and its agencies, instrumentalities, and officials. The OSG is composed of the Solicitor General and his or her Assistant Solicitors General, or ASGs. Currently, I think there are 28 ASGs. So, the OSG is comprised of different divisions, each headed by either the Solicitor General himself or the various ASGs. When you work in the OSG, you would be one of the lawyers in one of those divisions. So you'd be working directly under the SolGen or under one of the ASGs. Most of my batchmates who chose public service went to the OSG after becoming lawyers, and many of them are actually still there. Kwento ko lang, I interned there when I was in law school and I loved it. The second common public workplace is the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, composed of 1 Chief Justice and 14 Associate Justices. Here, your job title would be Court Attorney. In the SC, each justice has his or her own office, staffed with with lawyers and support staff. When you work in the SC, you will be working in one of those offices under one of those justices. You could also work as a lawyer in the office of the court administrator of the SC. But then you wouldn't be working under the SC justices, you would be working under the court administrator. After the OSG, I have the most number of batchmates in public service who went to the SC. Working in the Supreme Court is a good idea if you want to take your Master of Laws abroad, since by working in the Supreme Court, you would be working under a justice who could endorse you in your LLM or your Master of Laws applications. So many lawyers use it as a stepping stone in that regard. Now, related to the SC, another public service workplace option is the Court of Appeals. For non-law students, the Court of Appeals is just the appellate court, which is a notch below the Supreme Court. So Supreme Court, Court of Appeals. Similar to the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals is composed of justices. So when you work in the CA, you would be working under a CA justice. The next common public service workplace is the Sandigan Bayan. Law students know what the Sandigan Bayan is, for sure. For sure. But for you guys who are not in law school yet, the Sandigan Bayan is a special appellate court in the Philippines which has jurisdiction over civil and criminal cases involving graft and corrupt practices and other offenses committed by public officials and employees. Sorry, ang ingay ni Pancho.
My name is Pancho and I have officially hijacked this channel.
You smell like patis.
Do you hate me now? Do you hate me?
The Sandigan Bayan is comprised of 14 associate justices and 1 presiding justice. So, similar to the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals, you would be working under one of those Sandigan Bayan justices. The next common public service workplace is the legislature, or Congress. So, either number 1, the Senate, or number 2, the House of Representatives. This one's pretty self-explanatory. When you work in the Senate, you'll work as a staff lawyer of a senator. And when you work in Congress, you work as a staff lawyer of a congressman or congresswoman. Congressperson? Human? The next common public service workplaces I lumped into one category, which is government agencies or instrumentalities. Why did I lump them all together? It's just because there are too many of them to name. The most widely known government agencies are the following. Number 1, the Department of Justice or the DOJ, Civil Service Commission or CSC, Philippine Competition Commission or PCC, National Privacy Commission or NPC, Commission on Elections or COMELEC, Securities and Exchange Commission or SEC, National Labor Relations Commission or NLRC, Housing and Land Use Regulatory Board or HLURB, Intellectual Property Office or IPO, Register of Deeds or RD, Department of Information and Communications Technology or DICT, Land Registration Authority or LRA, Bureau of Internal Revenue or BIR, Bureau of Customs or BOC, Bureau of Immigration or BI, National Telecommunications Commission or NTC, National Bureau of Investigation or NBI, and Office of the President or OP. Now that was just a snapshot of the numerous government agencies and instrumentalities where you can work. All of those agencies or offices need lawyers. So if the executive department is more your thing, then those agencies or offices could be good options for you. Now next, I'm gonna give some runners-up or some other public workplaces which could be options for you. These were not common options for my law school batch because not a single person from my batch went there, but they are still options. It does not mean that they're not good places just because none of us chose to work there. The first is the Public Attorney's Office or PAO. The PAO basically provides indigent litigants with free legal assistance. So if a litigant or an accused can't afford a lawyer, then a PAO lawyer will be appointed as his or her attorney. Next, you can be a public prosecutor or a fiscal. As a fiscal, you will have the responsibility and authority to investigate and prosecute all crimes and offenses committed in a particular place. Of course, it'll take you years of court experience before you can become a fiscal. You cannot immediately become one as a fresh lawyer. Kasi pag bago tayong lawyer, wala pa tayong alam. But it's something that you can aim for. Next, you can be a clerk of court or an assistant clerk of court. Generally, courts in the Philippines, from the municipal trial court all the way up to the Supreme Court, have clerks of court. The clerk of court is the administrative officer of the court who controls and supervises record keeping and the safekeeping of exhibits and documents, among others. You'll basically perform administrative tasks to help judicial proceedings run smoothly. Like being a fiscal though, you'll also need a couple of years of experience in order to be a clerk of court. Another public workplace option is of course to join the judiciary, be a judge or a justice, but obviously that requires many years of experience. You can't do it immediately. Next, you can work in local government units or LGUs. Like for example, you could be the city legal officer. You would basically be the chief legal counsel of that LGU. The next category of workplaces for lawyers is the academe. This just means that you will be a law professor. A bunch of us in my batch have already done this, but very few of us did it full-time. Actually, isa lang ata. Most of us taught in college or in law school part-time or on the side only. For example, when I taught in law school, I was working in a corporation. My law school class was only once a week. So being a law professor is something that you can do either full-time or part-time. Now, let's go to the starting statistics of my law school batch. I just want to give you an idea of my law school batch statistics in terms of where we worked after we became lawyers. I'm gonna enumerate the top 3 most popular workplaces for my law school batch. Okay, so first, the majority of us really started at law firms, and mostly medium or large law firms. Bakit law firm yung gusto naming lahat? Di ko din alam. Next, a good number of us went to the Office of the Solicitor General or the OSG, although far less than those of us who went to law firms. And lastly, a bunch of us also went to the Supreme Court. So yun talaga yung top 3 in that order. Law firms, OSG, Supreme Court. Now let's go to the current statistics of my law school batch. Now it's been 7 years since we started. Putek, tagal na pala. So I'm gonna tell you where most of us are working now, 7 years down the line. So the answer is, most of us who started in law firms are not in law firms anymore. Most of us are now in-house counsels working in corporations. Why? It's simple. Number 1, we felt like we had been trained enough in our respective law firms. And number 2, we wanted work-life balance. We wanted to start enjoying life. I'll get more into that when I do a separate video on law firms, since there I'll be talking about the pros and cons of joining a law firm. As to the Office of the Solicitor General naman, or OSG, most of us who started there are still there. Those of us naman who started in the Supreme Court are scattered. Some are still there, while some already took their LLMs abroad and are now currently working in law firms or companies. Now, I have some general tips for you guys when you're choosing where to work as lawyers. The first is to know yourself and to evaluate your priorities. In choosing where to work, you have to know which things in life matter to you the most at that point in time when you're choosing where to work. Is it getting trained? If so, then you may want to go to a law firm first. Is it serving the people? If that's your priority, then you might want to join the PAO or the OSG. Or is it work-life balance? If that's your priority, then you might want to do solo practice. Because then you can be sure that hawak mo talaga oras mo. When I was a new lawyer, I knew that beyond what I had learned in law school, I knew nothing. Nada, zip, zilch about actual law practice. So my priority was really training. At that time, when I was a new lawyer, I was fine with sacrificing all the other aspects of my life because I was really after that intensive high-quality training. So I chose a law firm. Kwento pala, I remember that I have a lawyer friend who loves to travel. So she chose a law firm which she knew took their junior associates to the annual law firm trips in Europe and the US. Yun yung basis niya for choosing a law firm. O diba, ang bongga ng priorities. We're all unique, so you may have different priorities, which is totally normal. Just figure out what's important to you and decide accordingly. My next tip is to intern at the workplaces that you're eyeing. Many law schools nowadays require law students to undergo some form of legal internship. Now take advantage of that requirement and intern at either number 1, the place where you actually want to work in the future, or number 2, a place that will look good on your CV so that it will open doors for you later for you to work at your dream workplace. Don't be neutral about internship and just do it for substantial compliance. Use it to test the waters for where you want to work in the future. And while you're there, make friends, whether it's with the people or the lawyers who are in that office, or with your co-interns from other law schools who will eventually become your colleagues in the legal profession. I remember actually how one of the state solicitors that I met while I was interning in the OSG actually became one of my wedding ninangs. My next tip is to do your research. Don't work in the first place that offers you a job. Rather, be calculating and deliberate when choosing where to work. It won't look good on your resume if you're jumping from workplace to workplace, so you want to make sure that you're choosing wisely. If people know that you change jobs as frequently as you change your clothes, then your superiors will not want to invest their precious time to really nurture you and train you. So ask around about the workplace that you're eyeing. Make Google your best friend. Visit that workplace's website. Just do what you have to do to make sure that your decision about where to work is a careful and informed decision. So guys, that's it. If you're interested to know about more of those workplaces that I mentioned, then do keep an eye out for my future videos wherein I will talk about some of those workplaces in greater detail. Yeah, I hope I answered your question about some of the most common and popular workplaces for lawyers. Remember that the places I mentioned are the most popular workplaces only, so just because I didn't mention a certain place does not mean that you can't work there. Go wherever you want to go. You're free to blaze your own trail in this world. So yeah, that's it. If you learned from this video, then please give it a thumbs up. Please also don't forget to subscribe to my channel and to hit the notification bell below so that you guys never miss a future video. Thank you so much for watching, stay safe, and see you in my next video. Bye! Housing and Land Use Regulatory Bureau of Immigration or BI. Ang BI mo! A good number of us went to the OSG or the Office of the